Today I'm going to show you how to set up, wire and code this digital touch sensor to an Arduino. So let's get into it. So if we just run over the board quickly, we have that touchpad on the front. We have a bunch of capacitors, resistors, an LED and the 3 pins. Now on the back there's also that metal plate there, which I'll show you both sides later on how they work. But first let's get into where I purchased this from, which was online, only cost a few dollars, free shipping, so pretty cheap and pretty common sensor you can pick up online. Now the sensor itself is actually called a TTP223B. That's the technical name for the sensor, but you can just search online for digital touch sensor for Arduino or something like that and you'll find it. If we jump into the specs of the board, basically we can see there it operates between 2 and 5.5 volts. This is a very low current module, but also relatively quick switch as well in such a small little frame. Now you can use this in lots of different situations, but as you can see in the description up on the top there, it says it can be installed in the plastic, glass, non-metallic type of surfaces and hidden in walls, which I was actually interested in later on. I actually do a bit of a test and show how it can actually kind of be operated through other materials, so which is pretty cool. But let's jump through next to the wiring. Now the wiring, very simple. We have a 5 volts and the ground, which is connecting up to those first 2 pins, and the third one is the signal wire, which is going to a digital pin. Whichever digital pin you want, you can connect it up to, as long as you connect the appropriate wire to the appropriately coded pin, which I'll show you in the coding later on. So I'm just plugging mine in there to the breadboard, which obviously connects up the same way, ground to ground, 5 volt to the 5 volt rail, and then the signal I've got going to pin 52. Now, like I said before, you decide whatever pin you want, which brings us into the coding. Now, the code that I'm using is one of the example in the basic. You've got digital read serial. Now, that's all you need to do for this basic code. And like I said before, make sure you adjust your pin. I've got 52. You put in whatever pin you've actually plugged that wire into. Now, the code itself is pretty basic. We have in the setup the serial, so we can actually read what's happening, and that it's just setting that button as an input. And in the loop, basically all it's doing is just reading the digital pin and saying what's the state of that, and whatever it is, 1 or 0, because it's a digital pin, it's then outputting that into the serial display. So once the code's been uploaded and it's actually plugged in, all we need to do is touch the actual sensor, and that's it. It basically sends a digital signal through to that pin to say 1 or 0, depending on if it's touched or not being touched. On the back, you can actually see there's that metal plate there. You can touch that as well. It still activates on both sides, so you can actually have a bit of a switch on both sides if you need it. But as we touch on and off, we can open up our serial monitor via the tools, and we can see there the 0 and 1. It'll jump back and forward depending on if you're touching the sensor or not. So as soon as you touch the actual pad, then you'll see the 1, which means that it's being touched. You let go and it goes back to 0. So as I was saying earlier about it working through materials, I put 2 pieces, or it's 1 piece folded in half, and it worked. And then I folded it in half again, which was 4, worked again into 8, and then all the way to 16 pieces of paper, and it actually worked in between all that. So I even touched it just to make sure, oh, was it, something that was happening with the paper? No, it was literally picking up that signal through 16 folds, or the 16 pieces of paper basically. And yeah, it was still working. So I even tried plastic that was, 3D printed, clear plastic. It all still worked. So that was pretty cool. I was pretty surprised about that. So you actually could hide the sensor in behind something as well. If you wanted to, theoretically, you could hide it in behind a piece of glass, or in something that's enclosed, which would be pretty cool to, actually protect it as well. From the elements if it was outside. or it could be completely hidden in a wall or something like that, which is, pretty cool if you wanted a switch to, maybe trigger something like that. But I'll leave that to your imagination. So I hope you liked this tutorial. If you did, leave a thumbs up. Now make sure you subscribed as well so you can keep up to date with plenty of videos similar to this and more. Now, as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.